The vast blackness of space stretched around the Galactic Union scout ship as it drifted silently at the edge of an unremarkable solar system. Inside the command center, Director Park stood with his hands clasped behind his back, watching the main screen with mild interest. Another primitive world, he muttered, eyes fixed on the blue-green planet third from its sun. Run the standard analysis. The ship's sensors swept over Earth, collecting data on its atmosphere, geography, and the strange bipedal creatures that had spread across its surface like a curious infection. Humans, they called themselves. Sir, they've achieved basic spaceflight and digital technologies, reported Officer Han, looking up from her console. But they spend most of their resources fighting each other over territory and ideology. Director Park's lip curled slightly. Any unified planetary defense? Negative. Their nations maintain separate military forces. Most of their space activities are limited to orbit and their moon. Park nodded, having seen dozens of similar species in his career. None had ever posed a challenge to the Union's expansion. Perfect. This system has abundant resources in its outer planets. Mark it for standard extraction protocol. The decision made, Park authorized mining operations to begin in the system's outer reaches. The humans wouldn't even notice their presence for years. By then, it would be too late. 3 weeks later, luck ran out for both sides. A human research vessel, the Pioneer, was conducting studies near Neptune when it detected unusual energy readings. Captain Yoon of the Earth Space Agency diverted to investigate. Control, we're picking up something that doesn't match any known profile. He radioed back to Earth. It's massive and... Wait, it's changing course. It's heading straight for... The transmission cut off abruptly as the Union scout ship fired. A single energy pulse vaporizing the Pioneer and its crew of 12. To Commander Kim, who ordered the strike, it was merely removing a nuisance, like swatting an insect that flew too close. Should we report this to Director Park? Asked his second-in-command. Kim shrugged. Hardly worth mentioning. But send a standard warning message to their planet. Make it clear they should stay out of our way. Back on Earth, the destruction of the Pioneer was detected as a sudden energy surge followed by silence. Within hours, Union communication arrays throughout the solar system activated, broadcasting a message to every receiver on the planet. Attention, inhabitants of Sol 3. Your system's resources have been claimed by the Galactic Union. Resistance is futile and will result in planetary pacification. Surrender your outer system immediately or face elimination. The message played on repeat in every language, flooding communication channels worldwide. Panic erupted in cities across the globe. Emergency sessions of governments convened. Religious leaders proclaimed the end times. But at Earth Defense Command headquarters, buried deep beneath the Pacific Ocean, Admiral Lee received the message differently. She stood calmly as her officers frantically analyzed the transmission. Admiral, what do we do? Asked her aide, voice trembling. They destroyed the Pioneer with technology we can't even understand. Lee's face remained impassive as she watched the alien message replay. Then, surprisingly, the corner of her mouth twitched upward. Send the Icarus protocol authorization to all EDC bases, she said quietly. And contact every nation's defense. Minister, immediately. Her aide looked confused. The Icarus protocol? But that's the contingency we've been preparing for 50 years, Lee finished. Ever since we found the artifacts on Mars. Across Earth, hidden facilities began to power up, deep in underground bunkers and concealed ocean bases. Technology that had never been revealed to the public hummed to life. Technology reverse-engineered from something discovered beneath the Martian surface decades ago, something that had warned of the Union's existence. Admiral Lee turned to the room of stunned officers. They think we're primitive because that's what we wanted them to see. Our divisions, our conflicts, they've been watching us fight each other and assumed we'd be easy prey. She pulled up a holographic display showing Earth's true defense network. Quantum, shields, gravity weapons, fleets of advanced ships hidden throughout the solar system. Humanity has been preparing for this day since my grandmother's time, she said. We just needed to know who was coming for us first. In orbit around Jupiter, Commander Kim received an alert that made no sense. Human vessels were emerging from hiding spots throughout the system, places his sensors had shown empty moments before. As he scrambled to report to Director Park, his tactical officer shouted in alarm. Multiple energy signatures approaching. They're using directed pulse weapons. Kim stared in disbelief at the screen. Impossible, they're primitives. The first volley hit his ship seconds later, bypassing shields calibrated to stop weapons far more advanced than what humans should possess. On his flagship near Saturn, Director Park received the distress call from Commander Kim. His confident expression faltered as reports flooded in of sophisticated human defenses appearing throughout the system. It seems, he said slowly to his stunned bridge crew, we may have made a mistake. Back on Earth, Admiral Lee addressed the Unified Defense Council, representatives from every nation now working together against the external threat. They came expecting easy prey, she said firmly. Let's show them they've provoked the wrong species. Director Park paced the bridge of his command ship, hands clenched behind his back as damage reports flooded in from across the solar system. What should have been a routine expansion operation had turned into a military disaster within hours. How did we miss this? He demanded, slamming his fist onto the holographic display table. 3 scout ships destroyed near their Jupiter, 2 mining vessels lost near their asteroid belt. His intelligence officer looked up nervously. Sir, they concealed their true capabilities. Our initial scans showed only primitive satellites and basic space stations. Well, they're not shooting at us with primitive weapons now, are they? Park snapped. Show me their defense network again. The hologram shifted to display Earth and its surrounding space. Red dots marked confirmed human military positions, far more than should have been possible for a species at their apparent development stage. We need to end this quickly, Park decided. Prepare the pacification fleet. We'll target their primary military installations and command centers on the planet itself. Once their leadership is eliminated, resistance will crumble. Within 12 hours, 100 Union warships approached Earth in tight formation, their weapon systems charged, targeting major military bases across the planet. Director Park watched, with satisfaction from his command center. Begin the bombardment, he ordered. Show these humans the consequence of defiance. Energy beams lanced down toward Earth's surface, only to dissipate harmlessly against an invisible barrier kilometers above the ground. What happened? Park demanded. His weapons officer frantically checked readings. Some kind of planetary shield, sir. It's absorbing our energy weapons. On Earth, at Defense Command Headquarters, Admiral Lee and her staff monitored the attempted attack. Quantum shield holding at 96%, reported a young officer. All population centers protected. Lee nodded. They still think we're defenseless. Good. She turned to her communications officer. Send the signal to all hidden bases. Operation Shield is now active. Across the solar system, concealed human installations powered up. Bases hidden within hollowed-out asteroids, beneath the surfaces of moons, and disguised as space debris, suddenly buzzed with activity. Back on the Union flagship, alarms blared as new threats appeared on tactical displays. Sir, multiple human vessels appearing from everywhere, shouted the sensor operator. They were hiding in the electromagnetic shadow of their planet behind their moon, even inside small asteroids. Park's eyes widened as he watched hundreds of human ships materialize on his display. It was impossible. The logistics alone would have been detected during their years of observation. They tricked us, he muttered. They knew we were watching. The human counterattack was swift and precisely coordinated. Ships emerged from hiding and struck at Union supply lines and communication relays. They didn't target the warships directly. Instead, they systematically isolated them from support and reinforcement. In her command chair, Admiral Lee issued calm, measured orders as the battle unfolded. Task Force Blue, target their fuel carriers near Mars. Task Force Red, neutralize their communication hub near Venus. Don't engage their main fleet yet. Union commanders found themselves increasingly isolated as human forces severed their supply lines one by one. Ships that had arrived with enough fuel and ammunition for a brief pacification now faced the prospect of being stranded. An urgent transmission reached Director Park from Commander Song, who led the resource extraction team. Director, we're under heavy attack. Song's voice crackled through static. They have ships hiding in the rings of Saturn. Actual ships with weapons we've never seen before. How is this possible? How did they hide an entire military infrastructure from our sensors? Park had no answer. Decades of Union intelligence had categorized humans as a fractious, primitive species barely able to cooperate among themselves. Yet the attack they now faced showed perfect coordination and technology that shouldn't exist at their development stage. Fall back to secondary positions, Park ordered. Regroup at the edge of the system. We need to reassess. As Union forces scattered, Admiral Lee allowed herself a small smile. They're retreating, she announced to her staff. Phase 1 complete. Her, second-in-command, looked concerned. They'll be back with reinforcements. Of course they will, Lee nodded. But now they know we're not easy prey, and they don't know about our other surprises yet. In the hastily established Union base beyond Neptune's orbit, Director Park called an emergency strategy session with his remaining commanders. They were prepared for us, he acknowledged grimly. Somehow they knew we were coming and hid their true capabilities. We should request the main battle fleet, suggested his executive officer. With 10 times our current force, we could overwhelm whatever defenses they have. Park nodded slowly. Send the request, but also... He hesitated. Send all our data on human combat tactics. The High Command needs to understand these aren't ordinary primitives. As Union ships licked their wounds, human engineers worked feverishly in orbital shipyards hidden on the far side of the moon. Dr. Choi's team had captured pieces of Union technology from damaged ships and were already adapting it to human use. Their shield frequency modulates in a predictable pattern, Dr. Choi explained to Admiral Lee during a secure briefing. We can calibrate our weapons to punch through at the exact moment of frequency shift. How soon can we deploy this advancement? Lee asked. 2 weeks for the first batch of ships, Choi replied. Maybe faster if we pull more engineers from the Mars base. Lee reviewed the battle reports with a critical eye. They had surprised the aliens this time, but the element of surprise wouldn't work twice. The next wave would be larger, more prepared. They still don't understand who they're fighting, she told her officers. They see our technology, but they miss the real reason they should fear us. What's that, Admiral? Asked a junior officer. Lee's expression hardened. Humanity has been fighting itself for thousands of years. We've become experts at war by practicing on each other. Now, finally, we have someone else to focus on. Outside, Earth's atmosphere, hidden human satellites tracked the retreating Union ships. The first battle was over, but the real war was just beginning. The United Earth War Room buzzed with activity as officers from every nation worked side by side, monitoring alien movements throughout the solar system. 3 months had passed since the initial Galactic Union attack, and humanity had shocked everyone, including themselves, with their resilience. Admiral Lee stood at the central command table, studying holographic projections of Union fleet positions. The aliens had established fortified bases in the outer solar system, preparing for what would clearly be a massive second offensive. They're still underestimating us, she said to General Kang, who represented the Asian Alliance forces. Look, at their formation, standard textbook approach, no creativity. Kang nodded. They fight like they've never faced a real enemy before. Maybe they haven't. That's our advantage, Lee replied. Humanity has been fighting wars since we picked up the first rock. We know how to adapt. In a laboratory complex built deep inside, the Moon Dr. Choi's team worked furiously to integrate captured alien technology with human systems. They had recovered enough damaged Union ships to understand the basic principles of their weapons and shields. Their tech isn't actually that much more advanced than ours, Dr. Choi explained to visiting military officials. They just took different paths in their development. Their energy weapons are impressive, but they never developed our level of quantum computing or AI systems. He gestured to a partially disassembled Union shield generator. Their shields operate on fixed oscillation patterns. Predictable. We've already developed missiles that can calculate the pattern and detonate precisely when the shields are at their weakest point. Back on Earth, The war had transformed human society in ways no one could have predicted. Old enemies now worked as allies against the common threat. Resources previously devoted to national militaries pooled together for planetary defense. The United Earth Government, once a symbolic organization with little power, had become the central authority coordinating the response. In orbit around Mars, Captain Jin led a small fleet of human stealth ships on a daring raid against a Union supply depot. Their vessels, painted with light-absorbing material and running on minimal power, drifted silently toward their target. "Remember, hit fast and disappear faster," Jin told his pilots through a secure channel. "Don't get greedy." When they were just 50,000 kilometers from the depot, practically point-blank range in space combat, Jin gave the order to attack. 20 human ships suddenly powered up, launched precision strikes against the depot's key systems, and vanished back into the darkness of space before the Union defenders could mount an effective response. This was the third such raid in 2 weeks. The humans never engaged in direct battles with superior Union forces. Instead, they struck at supply lines, communication relays, and sensor arrays, the support infrastructure the aliens needed to sustain their war machine. In his flagship, now positioned safely behind the orbit of Pluto, Director Park received yet another report of a successful human strike. "This is humiliating," he growled, throwing the data tablet across the room. "They're using primitive ships but fighting in ways our tactical computers can't predict." His strategic officer looked nervous. "Sir, our analysis shows they're not following any known combat doctrine. Each attack uses different methods. It's as if they're inventing new tactics for each engagement." "That's impossible," Park insisted. "No military can function without standardized protocols." "Humans do," the officer replied quietly. "Our psychological profile was completely wrong. They don't surrender when outgunned. They become more creative, more determined." The Union War Council, after reviewing mounting losses, reluctantly approved Park's request for reinforcements. 300 additional warships were dispatched from nearby systems, quadrupling his available forces. On Earth, intelligence networks detected the incoming Union fleet. Admiral Lee called an emergency meeting of the Defense Council. "They're bringing their big guns now," she announced, showing the projections of Union reinforcements. "This is the moment we've been preparing for." "Can we hold against so many?" asked a representative from the African coalition, concern evident in his voice. Lee nodded to Dr. Choi, who stepped forward with unexpected confidence. "We've completed testing on the adaptive shield penetrators," he reported. "In simulations, they're 5 times more effective than our first-generation weapons. We've also reverse-engineered their faster-than-light communication system." This news rippled through the room. FTL communication would transform their tactical capabilities, allowing real-time coordination throughout the solar system. "There's more," Dr. Choi continued. "We've identified a critical weakness in Union ship design. Their central power distribution. Nodes are vulnerable to targeted electromagnetic pulses. One successful hit could disable an entire ship without destroying it." Admiral Lee's eyes gleamed with possibility. "You mean we could capture their vessels intact?" "Precisely." The next day, as Union reinforcements approached the solar system, humanity unleashed its most audacious operation yet. Rather than waiting for the aliens to attack, small teams of elite soldiers deployed in stealth shuttles throughout the system, targeting isolated Union scout ships with the new EMP weapons. On one such mission, Lieutenant SCO led his team alongside their ship's outer hull, magnetic boots keeping them attached as they approached a Union patrol vessel. "Pulse generator charged," whispered his tech specialist through the helmet comm. "We'll only get one shot." SCO gave the signal, and the device activated, sending an invisible wave of precisely modulated energy toward the alien ship. Its lights flickered and died, leaving it drifting powerless. Within minutes, SEO's team had cut their way inside and secured the vessel, capturing both its technology and its crew, the first live Union personnel in human hands. Similar operations occurred simultaneously across the system, resulting in 12 captured ships within a single day. The intelligence value was immeasurable. Director Park was stunned when he learned of the coordinated strikes. How did they know exactly where each scout would be? He demanded. We change patrol routes daily. The answer came from his intelligence chief. Sir, we believe they've cracked our communication encryption. They're reading our orders in real time. For the first time, Park felt a chill of genuine fear. Humans weren't just defending. They were adapting Union technology and improving it, at an alarming rate. In just 3 months, they'd accomplished what should have taken decades. In a secure underground facility, Admiral Lee personally interrogated a captured Union officer. To her surprise, the alien seemed equally curious about humans. Why do you continue fighting? The officer asked. Our calculations showed you had a 0.02% chance of victory. Any rational species would surrender to preserve lives. Lee studied the alien carefully before answering. That's where you made your mistake. Humans aren't always rational. Threaten our home and we become something else entirely. The officer tilted his head in confusion. What do you become? Admiral Lee smiled thinly. The most dangerous species you've ever encountered. The red dust of Mars swirled around the hidden human base as Admiral Lee's shuttle touched down. 6 months of brutal space warfare had led to this critical moment. Operation Red Dawn, humanity's most ambitious counterattack, was about to begin. Lee stepped through the airlock, removing her helmet as the Martian base commander saluted. Status. Report, she requested, striding toward the command center. The Union fleet is taking the bait, the commander replied. Over 300 ships are moving into position around Mars. They think this is our main headquarters. Lee nodded with grim satisfaction. For weeks, they had leaked false intelligence, suggesting that humanity's central command was hidden beneath the Martian surface. The Union forces had responded exactly as predicted, committing 1/3 of their total fleet to capture or destroy what they believed was the human nerve center. And our surprises? She asked, all in place and ready. Dr. Choi's team finished the final installations yesterday. Deep beneath the planet's surface, thousands of specially designed EMP satellites lay dormant in artificial caverns, waiting for activation. For months, unmanned mining vehicles had quietly deposited them in strategic locations, while Union observers focused on more obvious human movements. In orbit above Mars, Director Park stood proudly on his flagship's bridge, watching as his massive armada moved into attack formation. After months of embarrassing defeats, this would be the decisive battle that broke human resistance once and for all. Commence planetary bombardment, he ordered. Reduce their base to dust. Union warships opened fire, raining destructive energy. Onto the Martian surface, explosions bloomed across the red landscape as bunkers and apparent defense installations were obliterated. Sir, we're detecting no resistance, reported his tactical officer with confusion. Their defense grid isn't activating, Park frowned. Throughout this conflict, humans had consistently surprised them with hidden capabilities. This seemed too easy. Continue bombardment but maintain full shields, he ordered cautiously. Prepare landing forces. On Earth, the United Defense Council watched real-time footage of the Union attack on Mars. No one spoke as they witnessed the destruction of what appeared to be critical human infrastructure. Then Admiral Lee's voice came through the communication system. Phase 1 complete. They've committed their forces. Initiate Phase 2. From his position on a small observation base hidden in one of Mars's smaller moons, General Kang gave the activation signal. Across the Martian surface, beneath the very ground the Union forces were bombarding, thousands of dormant EMP satellites simultaneously powered up. Before the Union's sensors could even register the new threat, the satellites launched from hidden shafts, reaching orbit in a coordinated swarm. They detonated in precise sequence, creating an expanding wave of electromagnetic energy that washed over the Union fleet. On the flagship bridge, Park watched in horror as ship after ship went dark. Around him, "Report," he shouted. "Massive EMP attack. 70% of the fleet has lost power and navigation systems." His officer responded frantically. "Shields are holding on the command ships, but the rest—" "Where did that come from?" Park demanded. "There was nothing on our scans." Before anyone could answer, a new alert sounded. Multiple ships emerging from behind Phobos and Deimos. They're human vessels. Earth's hidden fleet, positioned behind Mars' moons during the preceding days, now launched their assault. Unlike previous hit-and-run attacks, this was a full frontal engagement. Human ships, now equipped with weapons reverse-engineered from captured Union technology, tore into the disoriented alien fleet. Dr. Choi's shield-penetrating missiles proved devastatingly effective. Each one calculated the exact moment of weakness in the Union shield's oscillation pattern before detonating, causing maximum damage. From her command post, Admiral Lee directed the battle with calm precision. Target their command ships first. Disable, don't destroy if possible. Human gunners displayed remarkable accuracy, targeting propulsion and weapon systems while avoiding critical life support areas. It quickly became clear that they weren't trying to annihilate the Union forces. They were attempting to capture them. Park watched helplessly as his carefully planned assault disintegrated into chaos. Launch all fighters. Target their flagship. But human pilots proved remarkably adaptable, using Mars's low gravity to execute maneuvers that Union tactical computers classified as impossible. The few functioning Union fighters found themselves outmatched by pilots who fought with unpredictable creativity rather than standardized protocols. 4 hours into the battle, over 60% of the Union fleet had either been disabled or destroyed. Park's flagship, one of the few vessels still combat-capable, was surrounded by human ships. "Sir," his communications officer said quietly. "They're hailing us." Park stared at the viewscreen as Admiral Lee's face appeared. Her expression wasn't triumphant or gloating, just determined. "Director Park," she said calmly, "your fleet is defeated. Surrender your remaining ships, and we guarantee the safety of your crews." Park's jaw tightened. "You expect me to believe that? After we attacked your world?" "We've already recovered thousands of your personnel from disabled ships," Lee replied. "They're receiving medical attention alongside our own wounded. You can verify this yourself." She transmitted footage showing Union soldiers being treated in human medical facilities. Park watched in disbelief as human doctors worked to save the lives of the very beings who had come to conquer them. "This makes no strategic sense," Park muttered. "Why waste resources on enemy combatants?" "Because that's what humans do," Lee answered simply. "We fight fiercely, but we don't abandon compassion even for our enemies." This concept was so foreign to Union military doctrine that Park struggled to process it. In all his years of military service, surrender meant execution or enslavement. The idea of treating defeated enemies with dignity was incomprehensible. After a long pause, Park made his decision. "I accept your terms." Within hours, the Battle of Mars ended with the formal surrender of all remaining Union forces. It was the largest defeat in the Galactic Union's 1,000-year history. As the dust settled over the Martian landscape, human medical teams worked alongside captured Union medical personnel, treating wounded from both sides. Dr. Choi moved through a field hospital, observing the aliens with scientific curiosity. "They're not so different from us anatomically," he noted to Admiral Lee when she visited the wounded. "Different evolutionary path, but similar basic needs." Lee nodded thoughtfully. "Maybe that's something we can build on." Later that day, she personally visited the secured quarters where Director Park was being held. The alien commander stood stiffly as she entered. "I've studied your species for months," Park said without preamble, "but I still don't understand you." "What don't you understand?" Lee asked. Park gestured to a window showing the medical facility. "This. You fight with remarkable savagery, then show mercy that serves no tactical purpose. It's contradictory." Lee considered this. "Perhaps that's our greatest strength. We contain contradictions. We can be both fierce and compassionate, both ruthlessly practical and idealistic. It makes us unpredictable." For the first time, Park seemed to truly see humans as more than just an obstacle to Union expansion. "The High Command will not accept this defeat," he warned. "They'll send more ships." "We know," Lee nodded. "That's why we're not stopping at Mars." The massive Union capital ship drifted silently through space, approaching the swirling nebula that concealed the Galactic Union's central world. Inside, Admiral Lee stood on the bridge, watching the colorful gases part as they moved forward. The ship wasn't technically hers. It had been Director Park's flagship until its capture during the Battle of Mars 3 months ago. Now it served as humanity's Trojan horse, carrying Earth's diplomatic delegation deep into Union territory. "They're hailing us," reported the communications officer. "Using Director Park's clearance codes worked. They think we're a returning Union vessel." Lee nodded. "Remember, everyone stays hidden until we dock. Let's not tip our hand too early." Hidden throughout the ship, Special Forces teams and diplomatic representatives waited silently. Among them was Dr. Choi, who had insisted on joining the mission. His expertise with Union technology had proven invaluable during their journey through unfamiliar star systems. Director Park himself stood under guard near the bridge. His cooperation had been reluctant at first, but as weeks passed, something had changed in the alien commander. He'd begun asking questions about Earth, about human history and culture. His curiosity seemed genuine. "We're approaching the docking station," the pilot announced. "Final approach vector accepted." Lee turned to Park. "Last chance to warn your people." Park shook his head slowly. "They wouldn't believe me anyway. The Council has never faced defeat. They wouldn't recognize it even now." The massive ship slid smoothly into a docking bay designed for Union vessels. Through the viewports, Lee could see dozens of similar warships resting in neighboring berths. The Union's military might was impressive even after the losses they'd suffered in Earth's solar system. "Now comes the tricky part," Lee murmured. As prearranged, Park transmitted his security codes, requesting an emergency audience with the full Galactic Council. The urgency in his voice wasn't faked. He understood what would happen if the humans were discovered prematurely. 2 hours later, in the Grand Council chamber at the heart of the Union's government complex, 12 alien leaders from different species gathered, expecting a report from their fleet commander. What they got instead shocked them into stunned silence. Admiral Lee walked confidently into the chamber alongside Director Park, followed by Earth's diplomatic team. The council members rose in alarm, some reaching for weapons that weren't there. Security. Precautions meant no one entered the chamber armed. "What is the meaning of this?" demanded the Union High Chancellor, a tall, pallid being whose species had founded the Union millennia ago. "Director Park, explain yourself." Park stepped forward. "High Chancellor, Council members, I present Admiral Lee of Earth and her diplomatic delegation. They have come to address you directly." "This is outrageous," shouted another council member. "How dare you bring these primitives here? Guards!" Lee raised her hand calmly. "Your guards won't come. We've temporarily disabled your communication systems. Don't worry, no one has been harmed." She nodded to Dr. Choi, who activated a holographic projector. Images filled the chamber, recordings of Union ships firing on unarmed human vessels, the initial unprovoked attack on Earth, and the subsequent months of warfare. "We're not here for revenge," Lee stated clearly. "We're here because you need to understand who you attempted to conquer." For the next hour, she methodically presented evidence of the Council's deception, not just of humans, but of the Union's own member species. Records showed the Council had deliberately withheld information about peaceful contact attempts from Earth. They had falsified reports about human aggression to justify the invasion. "Your own people don't know the truth," Lee concluded. "They believe they're fighting savages who attacked Union ships without provocation. The opposite is true." The council members exchanged nervous glances. One of them, representing a species that resembled tall, slender reptiles, spoke up. "Even if what you say is true, you cannot possibly stand against the full might of the Union. We have thousands of worlds, millions of ships." Lee smiled slightly. "We don't need to." She gestured, and Dr. Choi activated another holographic display, showing the locations of human operatives throughout the Union capital. Right now, human teams are broadcasting the truth to every corner of your empire. The unedited records of our interactions, proof of the Council's lies. The chamber erupted into chaos as council members shouted accusations at each other and threats at the humans. The High Chancellor raised his voice above the tumult. "This changes nothing. Our forces will crush your world for this insolence. I don't think so, came a new voice. All eyes turned to see Union Admiral Jun enter the chamber, accompanied by several high-ranking military officials from different species. Their expressions were grave. We've seen the evidence, Admiral Jun stated flatly. The military will not support further aggression against Earth based on falsified intelligence. The Council has violated our most sacred principles. The High Chancellor's face contorted with rage. You dare defy the Council? This is treason. No, Jun replied calmly. This is correction. The Union was founded to promote peace and cooperation between worlds, not to conquer and exploit them. In the following hours, representatives from across the Union capital arrived at the Council chamber. The humans' broadcast had worked. Species that had been part of the Union for centuries were demanding answers, refusing to continue a war based on lies. As tensions reached their peak, Admiral Lee stepped forward again. What she said next surprised everyone, including some members of her own delegation. People of the Galactic Union, we didn't come here seeking your destruction or surrender. We came offering partnership. She activated a final holographic display, plans for joint scientific ventures, trade agreements, cultural exchange programs, not the demands of conquerors, but the proposals of equals seeking peaceful coexistence. Humanity has spent centuries fighting amongst ourselves, Lee explained. We've nearly destroyed our own civilization multiple times. But we learned something valuable from those mistakes, that cooperation yields greater advances than conflict ever could. The chamber fell silent as both humans and aliens considered her words. After a long moment, Admiral Jun stepped forward. The military supports this proposal. We will not participate in further aggression against Earth. One by one, representatives from the various species indicated their agreement. Only the High Chancellor and his closest allies remained opposed, but they found themselves suddenly without support. In a private meeting room afterward, Director Park approached Admiral Lee as she reviewed the preliminary peace agreements. I still don't understand, he admitted. You could have destroyed us. With what you learned from our technology, with your tactical creativity, you could have brought the Union to its knees. Why didn't you? Lee looked up from her work. Because that's not who we want to be. Humanity has enough blood on its hands, from our own wars. We don't need to add yours. Park was silent for a moment. We believed ourselves to be the apex civilization of this sector, he finally said. But we failed to recognize that true advancement isn't measured by technological superiority alone, but by the wisdom to know when not to use it. He gazed out at the stars visible through the viewport. The greatest mistake we made wasn't attacking your world. It was provoking a species whose greatest strength isn't your weapons, but your capacity to unite against external threats while still maintaining compassion. 1 year later, representatives from 15 Union species and humanity gathered on Earth for a historic ceremony. The Galactic Union had been reformed into the Interstellar Cooperative, with Earth as its 16th member. Admiral Lee, now serving as Earth's first ambassador to the stars, watched as the new charter was signed. Dr. Choi stood nearby, already deep in conversation with alien scientists about joint research projects. Do you think it will last? Asked General Kang, who had commanded Earth's forces in the final battles. Lee looked out at the diverse gathering, species who weeks earlier had been mortal enemies now cautiously building relationships. It won't be easy, she admitted. But if there's one thing humans are good at, it's doing the impossible when everyone tells us we can't.